Once poorer than most African countries, but now one of the richest countries in the world, South Korea's economy has a lot to say for itself. But all of a sudden, in 2025, we find ourselves here teetering a bit on the edge. There are a lot of macroeconomic issues that South Korea is facing, but some shocking statistics for the first time ever have been recorded. And those are that of the total number of people employed in the Korean economy, less than 20% are self-employed. First time ever that it's dropped below 20%. The backbone of the Korean economy, small business and self-employed entrepreneurs, are having a really hard time. I just launched a snack brand and I also have some other small businesses that I'm running, so I definitely can feel this right now. But it's still totally worth doing business in an economic climate like this because business can really teach you a lot. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Tyler Take. Today, we are going to talk about the top 3 things that I've learned while doing business in South Korea. All talk and no walk. Most people, I would say, in probably any country in the world who first get involved in business usually tend to get stuck in their ideas. And I definitely had this problem for a long time when I first started my journey as an entrepreneur. And I would just plan, and not execute. Theory, research, blah, 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 zero implementation. And that can be a real big trap. And once you fall into it, it's really hard to get out of. It's kind of like a habit. It feels safe. You don't have to experiment. You can avoid failure and you can still feel like you're doing something. But at the end of the day, you really need to get straight into the market with your ideas as fast as possible. So no matter what your idea is, shrink the scale of your test, see if you can do it within the next 24 hours. Is there a way that you can start your business or test the business idea on a super duper short-term timescale? For example, if you want to start a bakery, then what you should really do is, instead of looking into all the rules and regulations about baking, is you should probably make something in your kitchen and see if you can get your friends to taste it and see if they like it and if it's worth selling anything. And if that worked and they said it's good, then you probably don't know if people will actually pay for it. So the next thing you should do is you could, take it to a corner and do a little mini bake sale on Sunday. Like, there's tons of ways that you can actually just immediately test out your business ideas. And if you haven't done those, then you should definitely not spend your time planning. How did I wind up learning this in South Korea? Well, the culture in South Korea has a super duper high emphasis on education. And I also personally, with my own background, had a huge emphasis on education. So it really fit with me, but that means a lot of studying and a lot of preparation and a lot of, oh, I have to know this stuff before I do it. And then when there's this like social pressure that's on top of that, and the culture also reinforces that, and then on top of it, the economy or the way that the political system works, there's a bunch of money and support and subsidies for preparing, then what happens is a lot of people in the market just focus their time on that preparation phase. A lot of the growth in early stage companies just becomes useless fat and not muscle. And so it's really hard to avoid that trap. But what I learned in my experience here is that a lot of people really fall into that and they're really encouraged by it. And then once they get out into the market, you see them fail and fail and fail and fail. But then there's all these safety nets that pick them back up. But then again, they fail and fail and fail and fail. Or maybe they depend highly on these safety nets too much and they get government funding from one place and then another place. And then maybe they get an investor because there was seed funding from some government organization, and all of a sudden they wind up with, $10 million and then no functional way of actually selling a product in the market. So this is kind of a weird Frankenstein approach that sort of happens in startups, but you don't want to find yourself in that position, right? So for me, I found that the best way to go about it was just bootstrap what you have. Take any projects that you have, any things that you want to turn into a business, and instead of sitting there planning it out, the best thing you can do is create a mini version and go test it on the weekend. Test it after your job. And most people around me here in South Korea have thought that that's super duper weird and that doesn't really make sense. Like, I would say probably 80 to 90% of people who are in business and entrepreneurship, at least on the small business side, are mostly focused on planning. That is a huge advantage because it means that you can be faster at testing out your product and save more time and save more capital before you really get yourself into more high-risk situations. So the biggest thing that I think I've learned about doing business here is that you really just need to do it differently than other people, because doing it differently than other people will definitely give you time, resources, and some sort of competitive advantage. Another big thing that I learned doing business is you have to say no in order to be successful. It's a super duper important thing. If you don't say no, it means you have zero standards. And if you have zero standards, you don't have quality. If you don't have quality, you don't have a brand. If you don't have a brand, you don't have margin, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So take the example of a bakery. You want to start a bakery, but you don't want to bake everything yourself. So you're going to, outsource some of it, and you're going to get it from a factory somewhere, and you're just going to actually cook it in your facility and then, put it on the shelf. So you're receiving a shipment from some food company in the form of, like, I don't know, frozen tarts or croissants or what, and you bake it, and then you put it on the, the counter, and you sell those. So say that's your business model. Well, okay, that's great. You're going to have to choose from somewhere where you're going to get your products, right? And then people are going to be like, oh, hey, this person is doing some bakery business. Let's go try to get them to buy our product, and let's try to get them have, our food product on their shelves. And they're going to come to you with a bunch of different offers, and some of them will sound good and some of them will really be great. And then you'll start to maybe say, do I say yes to this or no to this? And the more things you say yes to, the less quality and identity there is for your brand. And so then you're just going to have to compete on price there. But when you start to have a standard and you say, no, we only take things that are made from these materials. We only take things that do not rot in X number of days, or we only take things that do not have animal products in them, or we only take things that do not have allergens. Like, whatever your standard is, you better have a standard that you say no to, because before you know it, you'll be saying yes to too many things, you'll lose identity, and you won't have essentially a bottom line standard for your business, which will affect your actual margin bottom line at the end of the day. I've seen this happen so many times in businesses here in South Korea, especially in the media industry, when people go about creating some sort of personal brand, and then once they have this personal brand, they're starting to get requests from here and there. Oh, hey, can you advertise this for us? Oh, hey, can you come to this event for us? Or, hey, can you do this or that or whatever? And people will offer them money. They'll say, oh, can you come on our show for this much? Can you come to this event for that much? And some people get really excited in the beginning and they say yes to everything. But then what happens is you have no standard for your price. So you can't establish the price of your work. And when you can't establish the price of your work, then a price that anybody calls is a price that goes. And then all of a sudden, your total sales revenue is not going to be as big as it could be. As if you were to say maybe no to the bottom 50% of prices that are called and say yes to only the top ones, and then people will be like, oh, there's less supply here, so we're gonna have to pay more for that, and then people will automatically assume that they need to pay more for that product. So really establishing your product or service's price is, yes, about how much goes into the time or how much goes into the materials or etc., those basic things. But really more than that is, when do you say no when you make your product and sell your product? Saying no creates the price behind the product or the service. Because if you do anything and everything, then your price becomes the mediocre level of whatever people call. So saying no and not taking opportunities in the beginning of business can be really, really scary, because you feel like you need opportunities. So, oh, this opportunity came, I have to say yes to it. But if it doesn't fit your standards, you have to say no. Even if it means your pockets are empty for longer, you still have to say no, because otherwise what you're doing is you're reducing the value of your product or your service. So super important, no equals value. Really weird, counterintuitive, but super important business lesson that I learned here. One more final business thing that I learned is nobody knows what the hell they're doing. So I'm telling you, this is what works for me, this is what I've learned, but nobody knows what the hell they're doing. Most successful businesses or products or happenings that really get super way up there, most people don't know how the hell that happened. Even in the media industry, people are like, oh wow, this idol group, they did really, really well in this market, and they did it this way because XYZ, this strategy, blah, 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 but they actually have no idea. And then if you go ask these people behind the scenes and you talk to their business, they're thinking to themselves, how did that actually happen? They're not 100% sure, because the market is changing all the time. consumers are changing all the time, trends are changing all the time. One day, something that you made in your bakery, that bread, you put some ingredient in it that made it taste a certain way. That's really great that day, but then, a few weeks later, some news article pops up and turns out that ingredient isn't so great, and so all of a sudden nobody buys it. There's no way you could have foreseen this. There's just so many variables that are happening in the market. You cannot control those variables. You just have to do the best that you can with the product that you have and control the standards that you apply to your own product or service. You cannot control the variables that influence the market. So the market is going to change in every single way. Consumers are going to change in every single way. They are not going to act how you think they will. They absolutely will act in some different way. It's great to establish a theory. You should definitely, do the best you can to analyze them. But at the end of the day, when the consumer makes a choice, there are just way too many variables there for you to absolutely know 100% for sure which choice that they're going to make. Unless maybe you're one of these really big IT companies who has everybody's data and you can figure this out through some sort of crazy programs or AI. But that's the scary part of the economy. But we're not going to get into that because that's not what we're talking about today. So yeah, just take a little bit of the pressure off. Stick to your standards. Test as fast as you can. Assume that you do not understand the customer and that you will not understand the customer. Therefore, your goal is to constantly try to test everything, every step of the way, over and over and over again, and create standards from that process. So that's what I've learned doing business here. And I have my fingers crossed that the economy comes back on track at some point. But there are some really big, major macroeconomic issues here, such as the population problem, so on and so forth. So those are a conversation for another video. But I just wanted to share a little bit with you today about the business experience that I've had here so far. So a short video, but hopefully you'll tune in next time. See ya. Bye-bye.